Our adventure takes place on a world called Golarion. Golarion has one moon and one sun, with vast oceans and lush green lands. There are 8 continents on Golarion, with the largest being Kazmaran, which sits largely in the northern hemisphere. Kazmaran extends into the peninsular continent to the north, called Avestan, where our adventure takes place. Southwest of Avestan, across the inner sea, is the unexplored jungles of Garund, and thousands of miles to the west is the ruined continent of Aslant, with most of it being sunk under the sea centuries ago from the falling of the Starstone. Farther west from Aslant is the Arcadian Ocean, and a small island continent called Arcadia. And the smallest continent is Cyrusan, which lies in the rarely traveled portion of the sea. And finally, to the north, there is an immense frozen desert called the Crown of the World, and southeast of it, the unexplored area of Tianzi. There are many oceans and seas, but for us the most important is the inner sea, which is widely traveled and used for trade. It rests between Avestan and Garund. Avestan itself is separated from Kazmaran by the World's Edge Mountain. It stretches from the inner sea to the glaciers of the Crown of the World. To the west of Avestan is the Steaming Sea, a cold stretch of water with numerous islands dotting it. And to the east are the Mindspin Mountains, a range of mountains that begins on the Storval Plateau in eastern Varisia, and stretches for hundreds of miles before ending far to the south. To the south is the Kodar Mountain Range in Conqueror's Bay. There are dozens of nations that reside in Avestan, including the Infernal Cheliax, the Ancient Kingdom of Taldor, and the Elven Force of Keonan. Our campaign, however, focuses on Varisia, a wild frontier of rural communities, independent city-states, cyclopean ruins, and uncharted wilderness. It was originally home to the native Varisians and the tribes of the Shanty, who lived in peace together and shared their lands. However, Cheliax eventually sent settlers and conquered much of the wild frontier of Varisia. Despite this, after the death of the god Eridan, Cheliax's power largely declined, and many parts of Varisia separated from it and formed city-states and small towns. One of those small towns that developed is our town of Sandpoint. Sandpoint itself lies in southwest Varisia and sits on the coast of the Varisian Gulf, which leads out to the Arcadian Ocean. It enjoys a nice, tropical climate, and plenty of trade due to its access to the Arcadian Ocean. Magnamar is a very prominent city-state, and arguably is the most prominent city-state. It lies along the coast to the southwest of Sandpoint, and borders the Mushfens. The Mushfens are a wild and largely unexplored series of swamps and bogs, home to creatures such as giants, mosquitoes, and hydras. Ever since Cheliax's withdrawal from Varisia, Magnamar and Cheliax have been vying for resources, but never to the point of a full-out war. Other prominent city-states are the criminal Riddleport, which lies directly north of Sandpoint across the Gulf, the neutral Kaer Maga, bordering the Cinderlands to the east, and the traditional Carvosa, far in the southeast. The Storval Plateau itself is claimed by the native Shanty tribes. Northeast of Sandpoint is the Storval Plateau, which is a large, wild stretch of rocky terrain and mountains. Along with the Shanty tribes are ogres, giants, orcs, and more. Hook Mountain sits on the border of Storval Plateau, and is one of the few ways to gain access to the plateau. It also holds Storval Deep, which is the largest lake in southern Varisia, and feeds into many of the rivers of the continent. The eastern portion of Storval Plateau is the Cinderlands, an inhospitable region of active volcanoes, ash, sand, and toxic gases. There are many more places of importance in Varisia, and there are numerous small towns and city-states throughout the continent, but these are the main ones that may or may not pertain to our campaign. There are many races that reside in Varisia, with the most common being humans who are diverse in their ethnicity. But all these races are often divided because of their differences, and reside in their own separate regions. Of the ethnicities of humans in Varisia, the main ethnicities are Chelaxian, Shanty, and Varisian. The Chelaxians obviously come from Cheliax, and they're a proud people with dark eyes, dark hair, and pale skin. They often wear rich clothes to show their wealth, although not to the extent that the Taldor do. Oftentimes they're renowned for their negative traits, such as ruthlessness, arrogance, and ambition. However, they often tend to be well organized, intelligent, and have a great love of learning, as well as an inherent love for the laws. The Shanty, on the other hand, are nomadic people, who live on the Storval Plateau, the Valetian uplands, as well as the hold of Belkzen. They originally lived in peace with the Varisians, but battled the Chelaxians when the colonists expanded into their lands, and there's been bad blood between the two ever since. The Shanty vary in skin tone, but are normally deeply tanned to dark brown with a ruddy complexion. They are largely tenacious, stalwart, and mistrustful people who are oath-sworn to retain their lost homelands. And many would dismiss them as barbarians, but would often find themselves at the edge of a blade should they say that to a Shanty's face. There are 7 main clans of Shanty, and each have their own culture, clothing, and lore, making it far too in-depth to go about them for the purposes of this video. The Varisians are primarily nomadic and are sometimes called the people of the road. Despite this, they do settle permanent communities in Varisia, such as the country of Ustalov. They have deep olive-colored skin, long black hair that has a large range of colors, from platinum to the darkest of black, and no one hair color is considered unusual among them. They have large expressive eyes that come in unusual colors such as violet and gold, and they have long, lithe bodies with long limbs and a lack of facial hair. They're often unfairly considered scoundrels and rogues due to the actions of the criminal Skazarni gangs. They tend to wear brightly colored but practical clothing, and they prefer wealth in the form of gemstones and jewelry, and are fond of scars of all types. They will also oftentimes bear intricate and meaningful tattoos. While the races of Varisia are numerous, the main civilized races other than humans are dwarves, elves, half-elves, halflings, and half-orcs. Dwarves are found throughout cities in Varisia, known for their skill at mining, hunting, craftsmanship, and are also known to be hardy. Because of this, they are often forgesmiths, underground guides, mercenaries, merchants, and hunters. There are several dwarven settlements, but the largest and most populous is Yanderhof, which sits in the Mindspin Mountains. They also play a largely important role in Riddleport, operating the novel ore processing facilities called the gas forges. Half-elves tend to keep to themselves, and face a lot of prejudice from humans and elves alike. Because of this, they prefer to live harsh lives in the anarchic Riddleport or nomadic lives with the native Varisians. Sometimes even the Shanty will accept them into their tribe. Halflings, on the other hand, are very adaptable and are found in nearly all the big cities, as well as with the nomadic Varisians. They're good sailors, as well as seekers of opportunities in the city's underworlds. Many of them, however, originally came as slaves with their Chelish masters. Half-orcs are the products of rape after skirmishes between humans and orcs. Few half-orcs survive into adulthood, and even fewer decide to endure the racial prejudice that comes with living with humans. And because of this, they're very rare to find in Varisian cities, but are sometimes adopted by orcs and Shanty tribes. I could go into more detail with the various races, locations, and geography of our settings, but we'll end it here for now.